Matthew Schmidt is an expert on strategic analysis of foreign affairs as well as defence and intelligence issues. He's an associate professor of national security and political science at the University of New Haven. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
Okay, so for the first time since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, a ship loaded with grain was safely left the port of Odessa. It is a slow and dangerous journey to reach open waters. Here's the ship's engineer.
To be honest, I'm scared by the fact that there are naval mines. We need around 2 to 3 hours to exit Ukrainian waters. We hope that nothing will happen and that will not be any mistakes. That's the only thing I fear during this trip. As for the other things, we are used to them as sailors.
Right now, Ukrainian officials say 16 more ships are waiting to leave, but just getting the cargo takes out of the area takes a lot of risks. And there's also the issue of maritime insurance. So there are factors here beyond the war, like just actually getting a harvest in whilst you're in the middle of an active war zone.
That's right. Insurance is difficult to get because, of course, you're going through a minefield. I am unclear as to who is providing the insurance for Ukrainian flagships. So that's an interesting question to find out either from the Ukrainian government or from Lloyd's in London, and if the UK is allowing that to happen, if Lloyd's is underwriting at a reasonable price. Secondly, like you heard, you've got 16 ships backed up, and this is going to take 2 or 3 times longer than normal to move these ships out through those minefields. But I think the thing you brought up that's even more important is how to get the grain to the ships. And I grew up on a wheat farm in the middle of America, and I can tell you it's not easy. You've got a situation here where you have low yields in the harvest this year because of the heat wave across Europe. You have unexploded ordnance in fields all over the country. So farmers are worried about getting into those fields to try to harvest. You have a situation where Russian troops have either stolen equipment outright or have sabotaged it because they don't want to leave tractors and combine harvesters around that can operate because they can be used as tanks. And then on top of all of that, you've got the rainy season coming, and you have a question of thunderstorms flooding fields and making it hard for you to get a harvester in without getting stuck. When you put all of that together, John, you're talking something like 50% of your normal yield might get out.
And then there's the deal which is making this happen, the deal which was brokered by the UN and Turkey between Moscow and Kyiv. If it holds, and there's no guarantee that it will, but it's raising hopes that there will be an easing of this world food shortage. I want you to listen to the Ukrainian president.
As of now, it is too early to make any conclusions and predict future events. But the port has commenced working. Export movement has started. And this can be called the first positive sign that there is a chance to stop the development of the food crisis in the world.
So even if everything goes right, is Ukrainian grain shipments alone, will they be enough to make much of a dent in the food crisis?
So it's not so much about the Ukrainian grain getting out to market. So in the U.S., we've had good yields, and we're putting more out to sort of cover this. It's about prices being the right price to feed the part of the world in North Africa and the Middle East that needs it. Prices have already dropped. They're down to about $8 a bushel on the U.S. Chicago market right now. That's well down from what it was just a few months ago. The question is if it stays there. So if a ship strikes a mine, for instance, you're going to see those prices skyrocket back up, and then we're back to where we were before. And I think the real thing to keep in mind here is there's about a 40 million ton shortfall we're looking at this year in wheat worldwide. You might fill 20 or 30 million tons, but you're almost certainly going to continue to have a shortfall. And that shortfall will be drawn out over the course of the rest of this year because of what you're looking at to ship this out of Ukraine and Russia. And one more thing is that this is a long-term problem for Ukraine because Ukraine also needs fertilizer coming in to fertilize and plant in August and September for next year's crop. And they're not getting that because much of that comes from Russia.
Also, over the weekend came word that the man known as Ukraine's grain tycoon, Oleksiy Vatuchevsky, was killed alongside his wife by a Russian missile strike on his home. Some believe this was a targeted killing. If that is the case, why?
Running a market, creating a market is a complex thing. Figuring out how to set up local silos, right? What we call in the U.S. Cooperatives, to pull grain from individual farmers together and then to market those grains in larger quantities, better for the farmers, better for the country to get more grain out more efficiently. You need storage to do it. This is something you don't want every farmer to do themselves. You want to pull this grain together. all of this takes a lot of a skill, right? It's a specialty. Losing the man who ran the company that was essentially setting up a modern grain market for Ukraine is a massive loss in the long term for the country. And it's my belief that this is most likely a targeted killing. He wasn't killed in his office, right? He was killed at home. There's no military value, obvious military value, except for what he does as a grain merchant to target him.
An interesting point to finish it on, Matthew. Thank you for being with us. Matthew Schmidt, the expert on strategic analysis of foreign affairs.
Thank you.